Hey, beautiful souls, welcome back to the Healing Empath. I am a healing empath and I am your healing empath. And today I'm super happy to be back. I've taken a few weeks off and I'm really excited. You know, when you are healing your own self in a spiritual journey, you have to sometimes know when to decompress, take a break, and then, come back when you're ready. So I took my little break and I am back. I'm super excited about today's topic. It is going to be a fairly quick one. It's going to be about how when you decide to make changes for your life, where other people may get uncomfortable with taking accountability for themselves, they may get uncomfortable with your level up in your journey, whether that is leveling up your mindset, leveling up your body, leveling up your finances, or leveling up your spiritual soul. You may see people get uncomfortable with that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But before we talk about that, please hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications for future videos. Okay, so have you ever noticed that the moment you decide to make a change in your life, I definitely can relate, some people become uncomfortable. Now, the moment you decide to heal, okay, and I've spoken about this in my previous videos, when you decide to heal, you set boundaries, right? With what that can look like is maybe improving your health and not really eating all the toxic things you used to eat, right? Or loving yourself more or pursuing your goals, okay? When you're doing those things, the energy around you starts to shift. And sometimes the people you expected to support you can become distant, they can become critical, or they can completely disappear. Okay? So many people think that healing is only about feeling better, okay, or feeling joyful every day, right? But healing is also about revealing truths, okay? It reveals some of the things that it reveals is the people that are in your circle that support you, right? That support your growth, and who was only at one time maybe comfortable with the version of you that needed less or expected less or dimmed your light, right? And accepted less, right? So people will only know that one version of you if you were in that state of mind in the past, right? But when you begin setting boundaries, you're no longer available for those type of dynamics that once benefited others. Okay. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like that you're no longer over explaining yourself. You're no longer people pleasing. You're no longer sacrificing your peace to keep everyone else comfortable. And when you're in that state, I'm going to tell you that's exactly when you see the shift. That's when you see the resistance. Okay. That's when it often begins when you're in that state. When you start to go on that journey. Okay. So for me, I'll give you an example. One of my biggest shifts happened when I became a mother for the first time. Okay. So like having my daughter changed me in ways that I never expected at that moment. And they're not like these grand, big old changes, but before that season of my life, I was often related to as the fun friend, right? I was the supportive friend. I was available. I can go out if you called me to go out. I mostly said yes, right? I can show up at the last minute if you need it. I could spend hours investing in friendships and supporting the people around me at one point. But when I had my children, right, especially my daughter, because that's where the shift came, when my daughter came into my life, my priorities changed. It wasn't that I stopped caring about my friends or anybody, just anybody in general. It wasn't that at all. It wasn't that I suddenly just thought I was better than anyone either, right? I simply just started caring about different things, okay? And sometimes you think when you start caring about different things, the people around you are going to be with you on that same bandwagon, right? My focus was shifting towards building a family unit, okay? Like creating stability and being present in my home, okay? My ex-husband and I were working towards creating a family unit. And naturally, my time, my energy, and attention began flowing into that purpose. So the things that once interest me didn't hold the same value anymore. And some of those things was me partying. I wasn't interested in partying like that anymore. I wasn't interested in always being out or talking about certain things. I wanted to be home more. I wanted to be with my children. I wanted to build something that was more meaningful. I wanted to talk about things that were more meaningful. And you know, um, when those things were, I mean, and it didn't come in that exact order, right? But in the way I'm expressing it to you guys, that's when I began noticing the changes in certain relationships, not all my relationships. Okay. So what hurt at that time wasn't that people had different interests than I did, right? What hurt was realizing that some of the same people I had celebrated and supported through their journeys into parenthood didn't seem willing to meet me in mine. Okay. They didn't seem willing to connect with my children on the level that I wanted to connect with theirs, right? I embraced their children. I supported, their families. I didn't try to compete with them I showed up for some of their milestones. But when it came to my turn, right, or my level of interest, that same energy and interest wasn't always returned. Okay. And that's when the realization of all of that was really painful. But it was an awakening. It was an awakening for me. And it's not because I expected perfection from these people that I cared about and loved. And it's not because I expected people to drop everything for me. Oh, now I have a child. You guys have to be there for me. No, it wasn't like a scorekeeper. But because I began to recognize the difference between relationships that are built on genuine mutual support and relationships that were built around convenience and shared circumstances. So the distance that formed wasn't always because I wanted to push people out of my life. No, I wanted them to come towards me. In many cases, it just felt like that they were pulling away from me, right? I'm gonna give you an example. Like, if you have a child and we're friends, I would call you and talk to you. I wouldn't just call you to talk to you. I would say, "Oh, how's your baby? How's everything doing?" And I would always do that. But I had one particular friend where she would always call me the first year I had my daughter, and she was always calling me um, to tell me about issues that she had going on, but she never asked me, not one time, how my daughter was doing or how she was growing in her milestones for the first year. And that's important because, I felt like I was very close to her child, and very excited about his path and what he was um, growing into as a little boy, right? It's like I'm interested in your baby because I love your baby. But as my life changed, they became less present. As my priorities shifted, the connection also shifted. And I remember being so sad about it for the first year I had my daughter. And I questioned myself, did I do anything wrong? Was I changing too much? Was I really being boring? Like all those things that you think of and you kind of like center yourself about. But I realized that I'm gaslighting myself. That's not exactly what was going on. And once I started healing myself and going through my own personal journey, it helped me understand something very important. And what I understood was that not everyone is going to be meant to walk with us for the effort through every season of our life. Now, it's just not possible, right? Sometimes people connect with the version of us that exists during a specific chapter. And having a child, that is a chapter that's like new life and it changes, right? And when your old chapter ends, sometimes relationship changes as well. And it doesn't make them always bad people, even though at the time I felt like these people were being selfish or, because they mentioned like, oh, I don't come around because you're in a relationship. And I'm like, they've known me and I've been in other relationships before. What makes this relationship something that you don't want to come around? And we're supposed to be so close. We're supposed to be, good friends, like family. That's how I thought. That's what I was thinking anyway. But I was sadly mistaken because they didn't want to come around just because I'm in a relationship. That just doesn't even make any sense to me. So that means you'll come around when I'm not in a relationship, because it's not like I'm not inviting you or wanting you there. But things like this, it reveals whether the relationship was built on who you truly are or simply on what role you played in their life, right? In their life, right? Somebody that maybe has a lot of drama, somebody that went through things, and maybe the role you played was keeping them, in the scoop, or maybe they like your drama, who knows, right? Or maybe they like you being so available, or, you know, I don't know. And as the years went on, I realized this wasn't only about becoming a mother or being in a relationship. So, in different instances, not with just the same person, it just feels like every time I went to evolve myself, and every time I choose healing, every time I set a new boundary, I saw the same pattern appear with different people. So, that where I just mentioned how a chapter can end, that's when it started to click. Okay. Some people celebrated this type of growth for me, right? Some people laughed at it and others became uncomfortable, honestly. Okay. And then you got some people that may not know me so well, or they may know me, but we haven't hung out much, right? That are inspired when they see me grow. Like they celebrate my success, because success doesn't threaten their identity. My success won't threaten their identity. Me going to the gym all the time is going to threaten them, right? They are secure within themselves. They understand that my light does not dim their light. But others experience your growth differently. Okay. Your healing reminds them of maybe the healing that they tried to avoid within themselves, right? Your discipline reminds them of some of the goals that they could have abandoned, right? So now they're in this comparing mode, right? Or your boundaries expose where they have relied on unlimited access to you. So now you have a boundary. Don't show up at my house unannounced. And now they realize, like, wait, I can't just show up at your house anymore. I have to call before I come. Like, that sounds weird, you know? Um, your self respect removes the advantages that they once had over you, or how they tried to run over you. Okay. And it's really an uncomfortable truth. And what makes it uncomfortable is because some relationships are built around a version of you that was struggling, or some type of survival mode you were in, right? So that's why that connection was even formed in the first place, trauma bonding. Okay. And it's not because anybody doesn't, or not, and even for them, it's not because anyone is unworthy, right? Or just, you know, unworthy, but it's really because your struggles and the things that you've experienced, um, and the dynamics that you experienced could have made them feel better, right? Um, and when you decided, okay, I'm not going to accept disrespect, or I'm not going to accept being discarded, right? Some people feel like they lost some type of control, okay? Or if you stop doubting yourself, right? It doesn't even have to be disrespect, it could be doubting yourself. Some people feel like they lost some type of influence over you, right? Because now you are believing in yourself. Now you are feeling, um, you're feeling empowered, and you're feeling like you have some type of control over your own path. And they no longer feel that way once you start speaking and affirming yourself. Okay. Even when you stop seeking approval of others, you could have been always the type to always ask people for their opinion about things. What should I wear? What should I do? Should I do that? And now you stop seeking approval, and they feel like they lost that power. Okay. And when those things happen, when you start to get empowered, not everyone is going to celebrate. Sometimes people are going to project. They call you selfish because you finally chose yourself, you closed the chapter. Sometimes they might call you difficult because you created your own boundaries, or you're acting weird and strange, right? Other people may say you're different because you stopped accepting treatment that hurt you, but they may not come out and say that. Or you act weird because you're in a relationship now, right? But what they're often reacting to is not really the change itself. They're reacting to losing the access to the old version of you. Okay. And that old version of you is everything that we just talked about and more. Okay. So, but before I get into the next part, I want to be clear about something. Not everyone who pulls away from you has bad intentions. Not everyone, it's not always a motive where someone wants to do the wrong thing to you. So I don't want this video to come off like I'm trying to um, convey that, because I'm not. Some people just honestly are in oblivion land, and they just don't understand your new season because it's not their path, right? And then you have some people that are dealing with their own struggles. They're dealing with mental health struggles. They're dealing with their emotional struggles. They're dealing with financial struggles. They're dealing with their own relationship struggles, right? Some relationships honestly just run their course. It's just like it's no more. There's no more to go. The relationship has expired, okay? But I will say, after making that clear, that there are times when you can feel the difference, like you can know the difference. Okay. You can feel when someone isn't simply confused by your own personal growth. I think I mentioned in another video where someone said to me, "Oh, I don't understand this." And I'm like, "Well, what don't you understand?" They said this healing stuff. They don't understand my healing stuff. And I'm just like, okay, I don't know how to respond to it, because maybe it's just not his time to receive it. Okay. You can always also feel when someone is actively uncomfortable with your growth. You can tell when someone would rather see you remain in a place that really benefits them than evolve into the person that you're becoming. Okay. And I mentioned this on one of my TikTok videos. Um, I didn't make a TikTok video for the Healing Empath yet. I believe there is names with that, so I have to come up with something that just correlates with this channel. But what I said was, how can we ever grow as a collective on Earth? There's so many good things that I believe the Most High wants to grant us, but because we keep staying in this, push and pull energy where we're not evolving, and I'm not talking about money wise, I'm literally talking about mind, body, and soul, that we keep staying stuck because we refuse to make the healing changes that we need to make so we can become better as a collective. Okay. So, again, when your healing threatens this dynamic that once worked in their favor, that's when we're going to see the resistance. And it's never because you did something wrong. You always know if you did something wrong. Like you know when you did something wrong. But it's because your growth requires that relationship to grow too. So if you stop smoking cigarettes and your whole group started smoking cigarettes, and some people may be proud of you because they feel like they would like to do it too, but they're just not strong enough at the time. But then you got some that's gonna say, "Well, why do you want to stop smoking? It's fun for us to go to take a smoke break, and this is doesn't make any sense. You know that it could be worse for you if you stop smoking." Like, somebody will always find something to complain about, and not everyone is going to be willing to do that work, that you're actually working on doing. Okay. And then there are those people who also just simply disappear completely out your life. There was no argument, there was no conversation, there was no explanation. It was just like they ghosted you. And while that can be very painful and sometimes confusing, um, sometimes if there's nothing really wrong, the answer is their absence, right? Absence is their answer, right? Not everyone is meant to walk with you into the next chapter of your life, right? And that's just how it's designed, okay? Just like you may meet someone out and having a great time, and you'll never see that person again, but they were needed for that very special moment to maybe uplift one another. I remember meeting people, plenty of people like that, especially in my youth when I was out a lot, where I would meet someone, we would be out at a nice place, and I would meet a stranger and we would talk for an hour. I didn't even know this person, and then I would never see them again, but maybe because that was all that was needed at that time. So, not everyone is meant to walk with you into your next chapter of life, and that's okay, right? Sometimes rejection is also God's what? God's protection, okay? Um Growth always requires separation, and not because you're better than anyone else, because nobody's better than anyone else, right? It's not because they're worse than you, because that's not true either, okay? But because people who are moving in different directions eventually reach a point where they no longer resonate. And that's just really what it is. The resonating is very important. Sometimes you're just not resonating anymore with someone, right? Even in family dynamics, this happens a lot in family dynamics as well. Okay. Healing is not about convincing people to understand you. Okay. Healing is always about yourself. It's always about understanding you, yourself, everything that's internal, everything that's external within yourself. That's why sometimes it doesn't work when you're working out or going on a diet and you're doing it with your best friend. Depending on how serious you both are and your intention, sometimes it doesn't work. You'll be working out thinking that your friend is on a diet, whole time your friend's home having a steak. You'll be, your friend thinks that you're going to the gym just to find out that you were going to hide behind Wendy's to eat um, a number 10, a 10-piece nugget. You know what I mean? Like, it's not always going to work, right? When you're trying to do those things. It's never going to be about, okay, they were the reason I didn't lose 20 pounds because they went behind Wendy's to eat a 10-piece chicken nugget. It's always internal. It's always about understanding yourself. Healing is never about the people next to you. Okay. It's about trusting. And I'm not saying you can't have an accountability partner, but again, you have to assess whether that accountability partner is taking things seriously and you're taking things as serious too. It's also about trusting that if a relationship can only survive while you're at this shrinking, suffering, settling, or abandoning yourself energy, then it was never supporting your highest good anyway. It's again the trauma bond. Like, why do we have to only talk about suffering, right? Why can't we talk about maybe doing something positive or a positive experience, collaborating and coming together with something, right? Or maybe going to volunteer at a place, or maybe even if it's nothing but just having a good laugh and enjoying your each other's company. It doesn't have to be all specific, but it doesn't have to be about the things that always go wrong, right? And again, I do believe it's okay to have an outlet when you want to talk about things that are going wrong with trusted people, of course, but to only be talking about that is something wrong in your connections. Okay. So, or also, it's before I move on to the next, what I'm going to say next, it also can be that some people enjoy your drama. A lot of people are available when you have all this drama. They love it when you call them with the drama. They love it when you have something going wrong for yourself. They love it, right? Oh, I'll talk to you. And, they enjoy that. But when it's something good, sometimes these people can also disappear. Okay. The people meant for your life, though, they will not require you to betray yourself. in order to keep them. So that's also another indication. You're not going to need to betray yourself or go again or not be yourself. Like if you can't be vulnerable around people that you trust or you like or you're getting you're going to the next level with, right? Or you have a long-standing connection with, if you can't be yourself, then that's something wrong as well. Okay. Um, and if somebody requires you to betray yourself in order for you to keep them, um, that's that's also very toxic. You know, um, when it comes to the fear that happens when you are trying to grow, right? Somebody that is for you is never going to fear your growth. They're not going to resent your healing. They will not compete with your progress. That's another one. Competing with your progress. They won't compete. They'll celebrate you. They'll enjoy you, right? That's what they'll do. They'll clap for you, even at times where you're like, well, what are you clapping for me for? I didn't do anything. Maybe it's just showing up today. Maybe it's just showing up that you decided that you were going to go to the gym for the first day in 20 years you didn't go to the gym, and you just showed up today in the gym. Maybe you won't go tomorrow, but you showed up for today. So people will celebrate those things if they are for you, right? So I didn't really want to make this video too long, but if you have been feeling alone during any of your transformation, whether that's with your mind, body, or soul, I just wanted to make a video so you can remember this. You're not alone, and not everyone who leaves is a loss, okay? Especially if you just had some grief or things going on in your life, or you just got married or had children, or you graduated from college or high school, or you graduated from your I don't know, master's degree, whatever it is that you're doing, trade school, doesn't matter, right? Not everyone who leaves is a loss. Not everyone who disagrees is an enemy, okay? So if somebody disagrees or if somebody does not support you, it doesn't mean that something is wrong on your end. Okay, but it also doesn't mean that they're an enemy. So it's kind of like you have to take it with strides, and then every relationship and every circumstance is going to be different. Somebody watching this might have someone, maybe their family member, that didn't support them when they graduated college, right? And then someone else, they may feel like somebody or people weren't there when they had their first child, right? But again, you would know your situation better than anyone. But just because those things happen, it doesn't always mean that they're an enemy. It doesn't always mean that they have an ulterior motive. Okay? But the important thing to know is that the people that consistently fight against your healing, and they may undermine your growth. That's clear as day. They dismiss your boundaries, or pressures you, or they may pressure you to return to all your unhealthy toxic patterns and traits, is revealing immediately where they stand. Okay. But again, just because someone doesn't do that either, it doesn't mean that it's not internally their intention. So it's kind of like you have to pray to God, ask God to give you a discernment, and God will remove anything or anyone that is just not in alignment with the path that He has for you. So remember to keep choosing yourself, keep choosing your healing, keep choosing your growth. And in the end, the right people won't fear your evolution. They'll grow alongside you, or they'll clap on the sidelines. Okay? And if someone can't grow alongside it in your journey, right? Then what do you need to do? You need to just let them go with love, right? With love. You don't need to force, you don't need to pressure, you don't need to yell, you don't need to scream. You just let them go. And if it's meant, guess what? They'll be right alongside with you in due time. If not, that's okay too. Okay? Because it's your healing journey, and throughout your healing journey, it was never meant for you to stop and pause or wait so that others can remain comfortable, because you deserve to become that very person that you were always meant to become. And also too, to take out the selfishness, because we have to understand that sometimes just because you want to be on a diet, just because you want to change things about yourself, doesn't mean the next person is even on that timeline with you. They could be completely on a whole different path. And it doesn't mean you can't be friends, as long as both of you are committed to nurturing the connection. It doesn't mean that you can't grow in your marriage or in your love life, as long as two people are committed into building and growing. And as long as no one is degrading you for making your choices to make those changes. And it goes both ways, because we should not be degrading anyone else because they don't want to make changes. If it's someone really close to you, like a husband, a spouse, or then that might be a little bit different because you come as one. But when it comes to like friendships, family relationships, you can express how beneficial your growth and healing is. And if people are not on that timeline, they just won't be. But it doesn't make them bad, or it doesn't make them like they're nothing just because they choose a different route than you. Okay? So I hope this video came to you guys with love. This is my first video back after all those weeks I took off. I'm super excited to be back. And I hope that you take this video, whatever you take, and whatever you don't want to take, leave it where it is. If it doesn't apply, let it fly and move on. But this video, as in all my videos, come with love, and from my spiritual journey to your spiritual journey or your future spiritual journey. I hope this comes to you with those good intentions. But until next time, my friends, my beautiful souls, until next time, ciao.